Well, hello, and thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. I am Kristen Kroll, the Executive Director of United Working Families. We are a new independent political organization based here in Chicago, and while we've just launched 7 months ago, inspired by the success of the Working Families Party in a growing number of cities and states, we are less than a year old, but we're all on this call tonight because we've already helped to accomplish the unthinkable and fundamentally change the conversation here in Chicago. We have Rahm Emanuel, the mayor of the 1%, on the ropes. He has outspent the good guys over 12-1, but even that was not enough to hide his record of giveaways to the rich and devastating cuts to harm working families. By keeping Rahm to under 50%, we forced a runoff in the mayoral race. That makes him the first ever Chicago mayor to be held to a runoff. Already, together, we have made history. United Working Families has also helped force runoff or outright beat several of Rahm's hand-picked rubber stamp aldermen. And right now, our challengers are going to play a vital role in this home stretch here as we work for the next month. We've got 1 month to go to bring this all home and are facing all the corporate power that you can imagine Rahm is mustering. So we're glad you've joined this call because we are going to need all of your help. I want to thank the groups that have invited their members tonight to join us, including the Working Families Party, MoveOn.org, Democracy for America, Daily Kos, and the Progressive Change Campaign Committee. We welcome all of you to this conversation. Tonight, we'll have a chance to hear from Jesus Chuy Garcia, our progressive champion, and we'll hear from some of the local organizations that are building progressive power. But first, I want to introduce a leader of one of the most important national progressive groups, Ilya Shaman, representing MoveOn.org.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ilya Shaman, Executive Director of MoveOn.org Political Action and a product of suburban Chicago. And I'm thrilled to be on this call with all of you, with the Working Families Party, with Chuy Garcia, with SEIU, Healthcare Illinois, Indiana, with Democracy for America, the Chicago Teachers Union, and so many other grassroots allies from across the country and from Chicago, because what's happening in Chicago right now is so important. MoveOn's 75,000 members in Chicago endorsed Chuy Garcia for mayor in early January because of his commitment to standing up for all Chicagoans, for strong neighborhood schools, for public services, and for bringing opportunity to all neighborhoods. And one of the reasons this race is so important is that it is perhaps the biggest opportunity of 2015 to show that people power can beat the money power of the special interests. The first round, where Chuy forced Rahm into the first runoff in Chicago history, has already showed what's possible. But now we have 1 month to beat one of the worst corporate Democrats in America, to elect a champion for working people as mayor of Chicago, and to show all candidates and all elected officials and all Democrats that they have got to put the interests of working families and the middle class over the corporate backers, or face the consequences. And we get to do this all while setting the tone for 2015, 2016, and beyond. So thank you so much to those of you who've already pitched in or volunteered for all you've done, and thank you to all of you for all you will do in the month ahead to help elect Chuy Garcia. And with that, I want to introduce April Brett, who's the Executive Vice President of SEIU Healthcare Illinois and Indiana, and who's been a leading voice in Chicago, organizing the fight back against the 1%.
Thanks, Ilya. Hi, everyone on the call, and thanks a lot for the organizers of the call for allowing me the opportunity to join tonight. In addition to being an officer of my union, I am also a founding board member of United Working Families. And like Kristen and Ilya, I am absolutely over the moon about what's happening in Chicago. It may appear that our movement sprang up overnight, but the truth is that we have been building and working toward this moment for the last 4 years. What happened on February 24th is the result of union members, community leaders, and other progressive activists coming together to take back our city. We have waged campaigns that lifted up the voices and the issues of real Chicagoans, and we've been telling the truth about the tale of two cities, the one Chicago for the well-off and the other Chicago for the rest of us. 4 years of building was powerfully and emphatically affirmed for the world to see on February 24th. And I cannot think of a better leader and standard bearer for our movement than Jesus Chuy Garcia. I'm sure many of you woke up to the news on February 25th and immediately started Googling, thinking, who in the world is this guy? Well, let me tell you who he is. Chuy Garcia is the real deal. He is a true Chicagoan. And if you've ever met one of us true Chicagoans, you know just what I mean, because we leave an impression you don't soon forget. He is a dyed-in-the-wool progressive, and he is not a stranger to working families in Chicago. For over 30 years, Chuy has been on the front lines of the progressive movement in our city. You name the fight or the issue that mattered to us, and you could find Chuy fighting alongside of us. He has never disappointed us, and that's why he will be a mayor for 100%, not just 1% of Chicagoans. His vision for Chicago is my vision for Chicago. And when he takes office in May of 2015, after we elect him on April 7th, I know that he and I will work together along with the rest of the progressive movement, the rest of the progressive movement in our city to make our shared vision a reality. I'm going to stop talking now because you didn't get on this call to hear from me. You got on this call to hear from my good friend, Chuy Garcia.
All right. Thank you, April, and hello. And thanks to the Working Family Party, the Chicago Teachers Union, SEIU Healthcare, the United Working Families, MoveOn.org, and Democracy for America for tonight's conversation. Thanks in part to your hard work, we're poised to make change in Chicago that will be felt all across the country. I'm truly humbled to be a part of this grassroots movement, and I'm ready to work with you all to bring home this victory on April 7th. Let me take a few minutes to introduce myself. I came to Chicago from Mexico when I was 9 and lived and learned among working people of all races. I started organizing in high school and have never stopped fighting for justice and equality. I cut my teeth in organizing the same year Harold Washington beat the Chicago Machine in an upset that inspired a generation hungry to build a city where regular people had real power. When Harold was elected, as a matter of fact, the Chicago Machine still controlled a majority of the city council. They didn't want to govern. They wanted Harold gone. I campaigned side by side with Harold and was elected alderman of the 22nd Ward in an election that finally ended the so-called council wars and gave Mayor Washington a functional city council. I later became the first Latino elected to the Illinois State Senate and was an early member of the Black Caucus. In 1999, I founded Enlace, a community organization on Chicago's Southwest Side, and became its executive director. Within a few years, we grew our organization to 27 full-time employees, 120 part-time employees, and a $5 million annual operating budget. In 2001, we organized a 19-day hunger strike to force the city to build a school which had long been promised but never funded. As a result, the city finally built the beautiful Little Village Lawndale High School for primarily Latino and African-American kids from those two communities. I was elected to the Cook County Board in 2009. Since then, we've balanced the long-troubled budget and rolled back an unpopular regressive sales tax increase. I'm especially proud to have sponsored legislation that stopped police from reporting arrests to Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ending a practice that tore families apart and cost taxpayers by deporting undocumented people for small infractions like traffic violations. As you can see, I've spent my life standing up for regular folks in Chicago's neighborhoods. And in this race, we're up against the big banks, big corporations, and the one-percenters who've done just the opposite, closing schools and clinics and squeezing working families when they can least afford it. Under my administration, we'll build a Chicago that doesn't balance its books on the backs of those who can least afford it. A Chicago committed to economic and racial justice that respects human rights. Chicagoans have said they're ready for accountability and transparency in government and for mutual trust and respect among our communities. Together, we're ready to realize that vision starting on April 7th when we win the Chicago mayoralty and bring in a refreshed city council.
Thanks, Chuy. Okay, this is Kristen from Uniting Working Families again, and now I want to take the time to ask Chuy 3 questions that were submitted in advance by people that have joined us tonight on the call. Here's the first one that comes to us from Sabrina in Maryland. The question for you, Chuy, is how can Democrats keep the energy of this progressive movement alive and ensure that a progressive movement takes firm hold in America for good?
Good question, Sabrina. Thanks for putting it forth. The fact that we're so close to winning this mayoral election and bringing change to the city council in a major city like Chicago, I think is a powerful sign of progressive forces transforming America's cities and towns all across the country. The Chicago experience comes a year after New York showed that you can successfully push back a corporate agenda and through progressive movements invigorate democratic forces. When we fight back and win in places like Chicago and Newark and New York, we inspire progressives all over the place to keep building and fighting, even in places like here, where the task of electing progressive leadership once seemed impossible.
Thank you. Now we have a question from Stacy in Atlanta, and her question is, what has been your biggest challenge in taking on an establishment candidate, and what advice do you have for progressive candidates that are considering runs in their own local and state races?
Excellent question, Stacy. My biggest challenge has been convincing people that we don't live in conventional times. You know, the Chicago election is living proof of that. People would say, wow, you're being outspent by a huge amount. It wound up being 12-1. But understanding that people are feeling the aftermath of the recession even today is very important. We need to advance candidacies with critical messages that really project what people are feeling and thinking at the grassroots level. You know, Chicago's a really good example. All the pundits thought we wouldn't get into a runoff, yet we did. And we did it in spite of all the conventional bets that, for example, the low turnout was a death knell, or that not only would the mayor get reelected without a runoff, but that the whole city council would as well. The fact that 19 aldermen, 19 city councilmen were also forced into runoffs is a powerful phenomenon, a powerful movement for change. You know, Chicago still has one of the oldest political machines and a very traditional political culture, or so we thought. Something unique has happened in Chicago. Pro-change voters are more motivated than other voters we saw in Chicago. As for advice, you know, I don't underestimate the ability of activists to create change. The voters are further ahead than we give them credit for. Don't underestimate the electorate. A lot of people in Chicago did, but now there are some new believers all over this town, and that's why turnout will be much higher on April 7th.
It is exciting, Chuy. Thank you so much. And we're going to take one last question tonight, coming from Anthony here in Illinois. And Anthony asks, what specific actions do you intend to take to strengthen the Chicago public school system and honor its teachers and support staff?
Thanks, Anthony. As you may know, I've been endorsed by the Chicago Teachers Union and its president, Karen Lewis, the Cook County Teachers Union. They're the professors and staff at the community colleges system in Chicago, as well as the Illinois Federation of Teachers and the Illinois Education Association, and, of course, NEA and AFT, their national and international partners. First and foremost, we need an elected representative school board here in Chicago, and I'm going to work to make that a reality. The referendum, by the way, on the school board passed by almost 90%. So 90% of all the voters said we need an elected school board. For those of you outside the city, Chicago is the only city in Illinois that doesn't have an elected school board. And that means that the mayor can appoint a slew of billionaires and bankers instead of the educators and parents and concerned community members who should be there making decisions on education policy. I stood strongly against the historic closing of 50 neighborhood schools, primarily in African American and Latino communities last year. Under my administration, we'll strengthen our neighborhood schools rather than disinvesting from our communities.
Thank you so much for your time with us, Chuy. Now I want to introduce one last speaker, a very dear friend of mine, who's going to help tell us what we can all do together to bring this one home. No matter where you are in the country, you can join in our fight. Please welcome Democracy for America's own Jim Dean.
Well, Kristen, thank you so much. Thank you, April and Ilya, and thank you, Commissioner Garcia, the next mayor of the great city of Chicago, and I especially thank everybody for taking time out of your schedules to be on this call to join us for what is really a historic election that all of us can participate in, no matter where we are in the country. I'm the chair of Democracy for America. Our 1.2 million members around the country have been so excited about this fight because we know we have a chance to elect a real champion for working families and send an anti-worker corporate Democrat like Rahm Emanuel packing. We know it's going to be tough. We're up against a wave of big corporate money. Rahm Emanuel spent more than 3 times what every other candidate in the race had combined. He's preparing an onslaught right now of misleading ads on TV and direct mail pieces. But we also know that people-powered campaigning works. The doors that we knocked in this first primary, the phone calls that we made, that's what pushed Rahm into this historic runoff. That's what got Chuy Garcia into this runoff, and that's what got so many great candidates for aldermen elected to carry the progressive agenda. So it really brings me to what we can do right now, all of us, to win this election. And there are 2 big things that you can do right now. Number 1 is pitch in money to Chuy Garcia's campaign. This will go to fund organizers on the ground. These are very committed people who I've had a great honor to work with. We need to get them clipboards into their hands. We need to help them organize the massive volunteer network that's out there. And we also need to get ads on the air to tell the story of Chuy Garcia and also some of the shenanigans that Rahm Emanuel has been up to in the 4 years of being mayor. So it's really important to do this, and it's really important for us to get these resources to get out the vote for Chuy Garcia on April 7th. Everything helps, large or small amounts, and folks are getting involved at all kinds of different levels today. So if you can contribute right now, and we certainly hope you can, please press 1 on your phone if you can commit to pitch in and make a contribution to Chuy Garcia's campaign right now. The second thing that we can do is talk to voters in Chicago right now, all of us. The Progressives for Chuy call program is launching tonight. Democracy for America is partnering with Move On, Daily Kos, Working Families Party to build a massive program to talk to the most important decision-making voters and turn them out to the polls on April 7th. Our cutting-edge call tools allow grassroots folks like all of us to make the difference in this election from the comfort of your own homes, no matter where you are. Studies show that these conversations with voters work. They are by far the most effective way to convince a voter, to persuade them to go to the polls and to go to the polls to vote for Chuy. That person-to-person contact is what really means the difference between a historic victory, and it's also the difference between a historic victory and falling short. So we have got to make these calls, and we've got to reach out to voters and talk to them person to person. So if you can commit to doing a shift right now, please press 1 to tell us that you can do that. If you can commit to doing 3 shifts right now, please press 3. And we would love it if you could commit to doing 5 or more shifts right now. And to do that, please press 5 to make it. Again, these calls are incredibly effective, and they're the most important thing that we can do. Chuy Garcia win his election, his historic election, on April 7th. Now, you can find out a lot at this website in terms of joining our call program, and that website is www.callsforchicago.com. And please consider going there and signing up for shifts. There's a grassroots wave of support out there. We've just got to get out there and talk to these folks in order to be able to win this thing. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Kristen. And again, thank you all so much for being on this call with us.
Great. Thank you, Jim, and thank you so much to Jesus Chuy Garcia for joining tonight, and to all of our speakers and the organizations that are participating in tonight's call, including the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, the Working Families Party, Move On, Democracy for America, SEIU Healthcare Illinois, Indiana, Daily Kos, and so many great leaders and activists all over this country. This race is going to come down to the wire. But as far as I'm concerned, for the next month, nothing, and I mean nothing, could be more important, not for Chicago, not for our future, and not for progressive voters all across America who believe that the 1% doesn't always win. We're going to need your help. So please get ready to get involved. Do everything that you possibly can. We want to wake up on April 8th knowing that we've left it all on the floor here. We've done what we can to elect Jesus Chuy Garcia and send a message to corporate Democrats everywhere that money does not trump people power. So thank you, everyone, for joining our call tonight. Again, I'm Kristen Kroll from United Working Families. I'm so thankful for everything that you're doing for our great city of Chicago. And that's it. Let's go, let's fight, and let's win together.